Hi, my name is Koller, and I teach at Trisha both in the full-time program and in the evening classes. In this week's Parashat Tzav, we read about the dedication of the Mishkan in Parashat, how to get the Mishkan actually started, and at the beginning of the Parsha, some of the last details about what has to happen in the Mishkan to make it into the functioning sanctuary and temple that God had wanted. In Parak Vav, twice we hear about things that have to be tamid. The second reference is actually a little bit mysterious, that the korban that Aharon and his sons have to offer when they're inaugurated, when they're dedicated as Kohanim, has to be tamid. But it's the first reference in Parak Vav that I wanted to think about a little bit. We're told, Eish tamid tu kadal mizbeach lo tichbeh. The fire has to constantly be burning on the altar. It shall not go out. When we think about tamid, we realize that tamid was actually a trope, something very common back in the end of Sefer Shemot. In Prakim Chav Hei, Chav Vav, Chav Chet, Chav Lamed, regarding the Mishkan, lots of things were said to be tamid. They had to be constant. They had to be regular and perpetual. One in particular sticks out though. At the end of Parashat Tzav, after talking about the Klei HaMishkan, talking about the vessels of the Mishkan, we hear about the Korban Tamid itself. And that, of course, is a paragon case of Tamid, paragon case of regularity, of perpetuality. But in context, it seems to be dislocated. The Korban Tamid is not one of the Klei HaMishkan. It's not one of the vessels. It's not an object at all. It's an action. It takes place twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. Why is the Korban Tamid found at all in Sefer Shemot? We'd expect it to be like all of the other Korbanot found in Parashat Vayikra or in our Parashat, Parashat Tzav. It seems that the Korban Tamid, the very regularity of it, is the explanation for its location there. It's there because it's to performed in the morning and in the evening, and as such, it's actually part of the architecture of the Mishkan. Without the Korban Tamid, this isn't a sanctuary at all. It's not a temple at all. All it is a bunch of metal and wood and tapestries, but that's not a Mishkan. For it to be a Mishkan, it's not enough for it to have a menorah and a mizbeach of a certain size and an aron of a certain size. It has to have a Korban Tamid, every morning, every evening. Coming back to our Parsha though, we have the fire, the Eish Tamid tu kadal mizbeach. A fire has to constantly be burning on the mizbeach. In my afternoon class at Trisha, we've been studying the Ramban's commentary on the Torah. And the Ramban on this pasuk asks a very interesting question. He raises an interesting issue. So what does it mean that the fire has to be there constantly? Does it actually have to be burning constantly, or like the Korban Tamid, does it just have to be lit constantly? In other words, since we're talking about fires, the categories from the Gemara's discussion of Ner Chanukah come to mind. Would we say Hadlaka Usa Mitzvah? You just have to light it every day. Make sure there's a fire lit every single day. Or Hanacha Usa Mitzvah, or does it have to constantly be burning? Does it have to actually stay lit? And the Ramban says, this is a mitzvah from the Torah that the fire continue to be burning. You have to make sure there's enough wood there, enough fuel there for it to burn all night. And if the Kohanim are lazy, he says, Im nitatzlu ha-Kohanim b'kavta ha'esh aru b'lav. Then you've transgressed a prohibition from the Torah. This, I think, is a mashal, categories that are readily applicable to lots of aspects of our lives. There are times when our job is actually to make sure that something gets done. But there are other times when our job is to make sure that the table is set, that the framework is there for something to continue. And if it continues, then that's good, and we'll be happy about the results. But if it doesn't continue, it's not quite our fault. Our job sometimes is done by just setting up the framework. And to some extent, we think about education that way. We think about education as giving students, giving our children the tools, giving them the ability to go out and study. We don't expect to finish the job. We don't expect to accompany them to adulthood, shadow their every move so that they do exactly what we want them to do. We want to provide the framework, much like the Korban Tamid. We provide the framework, we say it has to be done once a day. The Eish Tamid, though, says that sometimes you actually have to accompany it beyond that. You actually have to follow the fire. You have to not just put the fire there and put enough fuel there, you want to make sure that that fire doesn't go out. If it's not your fault, if it's beyond your control, sometimes that happens. But to the extent that it's under your control, your job is to make sure that the fire can burn as long as possible. Shabbat Shalom.